Hey, welcome to lesson 3 of Easy Synth Programming featuring Syntorial. In this lesson, we're going to cover the amp envelope, it looks like. The lesson is called Volume, Press, and Release. And the first lesson is called Amp Envelope Attack. Joe is going to go over that now, and I'll see you when he's done. Alright, so he's talking about the amp envelope attack, which let's go and take a look at it. Well, it's a challenge right away, but let me give you a quick anecdote. The amp envelope is the beginning of modulating your parameters using envelopes or LFOs. An LFO, like we talked about, is a low frequency oscillator which goes slow, less than 20 cycles per second, although they can go up into the so-called audible range, which is above 20 hertz. And then you get kind of weird effects. But the ADSR envelopes, like they have in this synth, what they do is they adjust your attack, your decay, your sustain and release. And we'll get through all the parameters, but quick story about why I feel it's important to share my synth knowledge, because Best Buy used to have a music store. And in it they had a little, I think it was a Korg synth, whatever the blue one was, Ultra Nova or something, and it had a microphone. And I didn't know anything about synths at the time, really. So I was like, yeah, man, attack. I want this keyboard to have a lot of attack in the sound. So I turned the attack all the way up. And once again, it wasn't making any noise. I was like, what the I felt really embarrassed. But as it turns out, if you really want a sharp attack, you need to turn the attack down. Like, it's kind of counterintuitive. So let's do the challenge. Yeah, this is the thing, okay? A little slider. And this is how it sounds. So here's what I thought it did. I'm like, yeah, massive attack, right? Not a lot going on, especially if the filter's down, nothing. But here, instant on. That's all it does. And it's measured in milliseconds, 1,000 milliseconds, or that's 10,000 milliseconds, which obviously means 10 seconds to get to full volume. 2.5 seconds. 1,000, 150 milliseconds, which is like 15% of 1 second. He said that's like a string attack, and then here, 0. Alright, remember how I talked about the click function? This is helpful in times like this, where you have a long attack. I don't think that was 10,000. Maybe it was 2,500. So I'm using the X key to bounce between and play on middle C. Oh, actually, this is middle C here. Mine's too fast. See how mine ramps up and his doesn't? Listen to his. And then listen to mine. It just comes at you a lot faster, so. Another thing you can listen for is, in the beginning, it almost sounds like nothing happens within like the first 100 milliseconds or so. Hear that? Like my key presses and then the sound happens a little after. And if we bring it down a little bit, you can pretty much instantly hear a sound. So that's another little detail to listen for. Another thing to listen for is a little poppiness, especially in the higher frequencies. As opposed to this. Right? That sounds more like The Legend of Zelda or something. Yeah! Now that's not 150 milliseconds. It's just too slow. So it's about, 1,000. Sounds the same to me. That almost sounded the same. No, his is slower. Yeah. So what would you use this for? He was giving the example of pads, background pad sounds. Also, like film sound design, where you want a sound to swell in. You're also going to use this kind of effect maybe for some white noise in a track, or hearing how sounds fade in or out if you're doing some mixing. See that? He also said that this 150 millisecond attack value kind of gives a reverse sound, and that's exactly what I'm hearing here. Hear it? It's kind of bouncy. Cool. Let's move on. Okay, so what this lesson is about is the release. If you have the attack, you can think of it as what happens when you actually attack the key. Let's go to the challenge so we can hear something. So now we have the attack all the way down. We can't see the control because we're focusing on one thing at a time. But what happens when I release the key? In this case, within 15 milliseconds, it tails off, which is really a short amount of time. Our ears can't even hear the difference between 0 and 10 milliseconds. So an extra 5 milliseconds is just as little as possible. Besides 0, which, like he says, sounds like weird. Just a little bit softer with the 15 milliseconds. You can have a little bit more or a lot more. Where it's almost like you're holding down the pedal of a piano. Okay. And he also mentioned about the room thing, like I showed you. If you're in the Patreon club, then you'll understand. We talked about setting your amp envelope to give it more of a sound of reverb or something, and that's what we're seeing here. Let's do the challenge. Now, we know we're focusing on the release, so there's no point to hold the key down. There's no value that we're being tested on, so let's just hit it fast. Ours is obviously a lot less. Let's see if it's 188 milliseconds. Too little. That's it. You hear the difference? As opposed to... You know, it's sort of like if you were to hit a spring or something that had some resonance, it wouldn't just decay instantly, like a piece of plastic. Even a piece of plastic, like my whole keyboard resonates a little. And that's the kind of effect that we're able to emulate with this control value. Yeah! Now that's obviously a lot longer. Is it 10 seconds? It could be. I don't think so. Hear how that one sounds like I'm still holding the key even though I'm not? Because look. And here's 5,000. It does start to decay. Just like this one. It doesn't sound like it's being depressed. Yeah! That sounds like it's just the default state. You know, if you're programming a sub bass, for instance, using a sine wave, if you have your release value at 0, it might give you a click. So that's what I'm going to listen for here, except in a higher range, because he's not letting me put it on a sine wave. What happens if I put it on 0? I want to say that I hear just a little bit of that softness, so I'm going to go ahead and say it's 15 milliseconds. It's almost like there's no difference, but every once in a while you catch that there is. So hopefully I'm right here. Is that 188 this time? Or is it 515 again? I think 188. I actually thought it was the same. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, so here we are, 188 milliseconds. Compared to 515. You know, this sounds kind of like a guitar where you just mute a string in a non-harmonic spot on the fretboard and you just pluck it. It'll kind of ring a little. So that's what we're getting here. Yeah! Maybe that's 2500. Or there's not even an option. So this is 1890. It's like basically 2000. I think that's the same. Yeah! Cool. Yeah! Next. Oh, quiz time. When we modulate something, he talked about this, and I mentioned it. Modulation is changing, particularly changing something over time, and especially with synths at least, some sort of patternistic way. So yeah, we change it. What section of the synth modulates volume over time? The amp envelope. Unless you have like a crazy oscillator or whatever, but let's just keep it simple. Which stage of the amp envelope determines how your volume reacts to a key press? Remember, I said you attack it, so that's the part that determines that. Which stage of the amp envelope determines how your volume reacts to a key release? Keyword here being release. Okay. Describe the attack and release. I want you guys to think about it real quick. Put your comment in the comment section. What do you think? Is this a long attack? Is it an instant attack? Or a quick attack? What's the difference between quick and instant? Is it, now listen to the release. Is it long or short? Is that, I mean, that's obviously short, right? So I would say instant attack, short release. The quick attack and short release isn't even an option, so whatever. That one's a little bit more tricky. Listen to it. Again, think it through. What was the first thing that stuck out to you? Leave a comment. The first thing that stuck out to me was that it had a pretty quick attack. It wasn't instant though, so it's kind of like that string attack. Wah, wah, wah. Instead of it's like wah. And see, he releases it right away. He's like. So the attack, I mean the attack is quick, not instant, and the release is long. Definitely not short. Okay, you get that? Let me give you a visual. Okay, the attack is pretty long. But the release, is there anything really happening by the time I release the key? The answer is no. So long attack, short release. Okay, what's the difference there? The attack sounds the same, meaning what happens when you attack the key, it still sounds long. So here I push, and then I release, and it fades. It's just much more smooth. Wait. Both of those are real long. So long attack, long release. Awesome. So I'm gonna do group challenge 2. All right, man, let's do the challenge. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6 variables. And what I have found is that don't think just because this is the amp attack and amp release challenge that that's all he's going to throw at you. He's pretty crafty, especially in the later lessons. So consider yourself only with what is the sound that I'm trying to emulate. And these are just the controls that you can use to do it. You know, it's like paint this picture. Here are your primaries. Do it. Don't think that he's not combining colors on the rest of your palette. So let's get started. Okay. I think that's a square wave, and I think it has a short attack, and I think it has like a release kind of around here. And how much was it filtered? A little. Maybe here. So not that much. And here mine has a little bit more of a tail. There we go. And once again, just because you think it sounds right, make sure you check your different ranges. And especially the bass. Okay? That's right. Yeah! Okay. That's either a saw. It's got a slow fade in. I wouldn't say quite 150 milliseconds, but maybe. Yeah. And then see how he releases it? A little tail. The filter's down a little. Maybe a little more. Okay, there you go. Okay. Look, if you're doing your patches and you know that the amp envelope is long, you have to hold the key down for the whole time to make sure that you're getting that value correct. Yeah! Okay, I think that's kind of like a medium pulse or thin. The cutoff is way down. The attack is pretty short. But the release is like at least over here. Let's just use middle C. Does mine sound a little bit more dull or something? Or a little quieter? Again, guys, this is where the click comes in handy. So we'll just count the clicks till it disappears. I didn't even... I think we have to use this example. Okay, let's listen. 5. What about mine? That's pretty much the same, but okay, times like this, because it does sound close, but it has to be exact. So I'm going to drop it a little and hear what happens. That sounds way too muted, and I bet you this is going to be too long. Again, it has that depressed sound. You know, like when your keyboard glitches and you have to hit the panic button? That's what a really long release sounds like. I think we're right. I told you I like to check down in the lowest ranges just to make sure my oscillator is correct. What? You know what? I would say that is almost like an FM sound, but it's obviously not. Maybe it's a thin pulse. Sometimes these square waves or these pulse waves sound FM-y, FM-ish. If you don't know what FM is, you'll learn later. But it sounds kind of mechanical or something. Whoa. square wave, and my cutoff is too high. My volume is too low. I'm just all jacked up, man. Let's listen. Okay, here's a good example of two short releases that are similar. Listen to his. Listen to mine. Mine sounds like a computer from the 1980s giving an error message. His sounds like an instrument. You can hear that, right? Our volumes are about the same. Let me turn my volume up just a little bit. Hear how mine's just bigger when I turn it up? Let's make it a little smaller. See, it just comes forward a little more. So I think that's the patch. Yeah! I don't think that's a saw. I think it's a pulse, and I think it has a long attack. And I don't know how long the release is. See, again, if you have a patch like this where it has a long attack and a long release, it's kind of annoying because if you just tap it, it doesn't get the full volume. I think that's pretty close. Let's bring the filter down. Yeah, pretty close. Sorry about the construction noise. Apartment living. Let's check the low oscillator. You can hear it has similar overtones. So I think the wave shape is right. I don't think I don't think this is right. Yeah, let's check the loop real quick. Sorry, click. The release is right. I think the volume is right too. Yeah! Hear how when he changed notes it kind of cut off really fast? That makes me think the attack is pretty short. Not super short. Is it 1,000? I don't. This sounds like one of those tricky ones where the filter is just down a touch. I think he's got his attack or volume down. Long release. Oh my gosh, what? I'm listening for the filter here. how loud his gets given enough time. That's another thing you gotta concern about. Like, it's a long attack, so you have to really wait and see how far forward is it coming. I think the cutoff is just down a touch. So let's get the amp envelope right and the volume. And it's obviously a saw. I mean, listen to it down here. It's a saw for sure. So let's okay. I think pretty much. Let's try it at 2000. I think that decays a lot quicker than it should. It goes pretty long, but it's not like it's, you know, hanging around like a fart that won't die. Yeah! I did it. Yeah! All right. So we covered the attack stage of the ADSR envelope, which is attack, decay, sustain, release. We'll get to the two middle phases soon enough, but attack is what happens when you attack the key. Basically, it's kind of counterintuitive. The lower the attack, it's basically attack time. So if you turn up the attack, it's turning up the time it takes for the attack phase of the ADSR. See, it's stupid. It's how much time it takes to get to full volume. And even then, you can, later on, you can mess with that. But yeah, in ADSR, you've seen, like if you look at like Attack magazine, they have an ADSR envelope as their logo or something. So the attack is like a linear, usually, phase, and then it goes to whatever the release is, which leads you to your sustain level. It's not sustain time, sustain level, and then your release time, which once you release the key, how long will it linger? So attack is the opposite of release. Attack, how long will it take to get to full volume? Release is how long will it take to get to zero volume, or amplitude, or voltage, whatever. So you can't hear it no more. Patrons and I are going to explore On Your Own 3, which will be released concurrently with this public YouTube lesson. So join me there. If you don't know, YouTube is demonetizing every channel that has less than 1,000 subs and 4,000 hours of watch time for the year. So I only need like 859 more subscribers. So join me as I learn synthesis, put out music, and do other wild stuff. Peace.